responses, but also the total number of original responses. And people are mildly manic. They come up with 3 times as many responses and 3 times as many original responses. Put to good use, infectious enthusiasm is a wonderful thing. Used badly, it is calamitous. I started my book with a chapter called Incapable of Being Indifferent. And it was a chapter about 2 great conservationists in this country, Theodore Roosevelt and John Muir. And I focused upon them partly because they're intrinsically fascinating people and had such an enormous impact on the American wilderness, but also because they came from such incredibly different backgrounds. And
so that's Kay, and by the way, you can find her a kind of amazing. Let's just go Kay. So you can see some of her books, An Unquiet Mind, which is basically about a bipolar person and how their mind works. Touched with Fire is about various philosophers like William James, Kierkegaard, and others that she has basically considered to be bipolar. Night Falls Fast is about suicide and how quickly it takes over a person, so be careful, and how you get help. Manic depressive illness, but she is very good. I'm not related, by the way, even though the name is the same, but she's out there and she's written quite a lot of interesting stuff on that subject, if you're interested. But so they diagnosed Kierkegaard as bipolar, and it's just amazing. He is a fascinating writer. If you read his stuff, you'll discover that he has the template to be fascinating, to say things that are absolutely serious and hilarious at the same time, ironic, it's irony, and yet at the same time, it is serious. It is serious stuff, and it absorbs people. And so that's why the trigger warning, by the way, you could get started reading Kierkegaard and never get out. I've actually had a student once who was healthy, clean-shaven, healthy-looking, happy, was taking my course. We got up to Kierkegaard, and about Kierkegaard, all of a sudden, he kind of disappeared. 2 years later, I saw him walking around on campus, kind of a dark trench coat, just black circles under the eyes. And as soon as I saw him, I said, "Are you still reading Kierkegaard?" And he said, "Oh, I can't get enough of him." Stop! Move on to pragmatists or something. You know, don't just keep reading this. It's like diving into a well and enjoying it. And that's attractive, I know, especially because Kierkegaard is actually talking to you. You'll feel an association with his thinking. Because why? Well, as a post-Hegelian, and by the way, he actually went to Berlin and studied for about 4 months with Hegel's roommate, because Hegel had died by this time, but his roommate, Friedrich Schelling, remember there was that tension between them, he and also Karl Marx were studying at about the same time. And I don't know if they're in the same class. They certainly wouldn't have met one another. But in any case, they're both influenced by Friedrich Schelling. And as a result of this, which is a Hegelian milieu, I mean, even Schelling, of course, is so similar in so many ways to Hegel's thinking, that you get this view that we have progressed beyond the past classical meta-narratives of why we are here. The old religions have died. I mean, we haven't gotten to Nietzsche yet, who says God is dead, and all those people in the corrupt crypt, of the dead God don't realize it yet. And I come down from the hill and I say, God is dead, and people look at me like I'm an idiot, because they don't understand, right? It's not that we've killed God, although this is clearly a Christian metaphor, death on the cross of the Christ. But we have killed the reason for needing this God. And that's where we have tried. Utility, evolution, we've evolved past that point. We now know that those religions were created by men for human purposes. Sure, they had achieved things. They created a structural society so that the society was of one cultural mind and was able to achieve things, sometimes great things like cathedrals and wars and things. But we now no longer believe in these gods. Instead, we believe that we ourselves have to create value for ourselves. Remember, for the utilitarians, that means we have to understand the nature as scientifically as possible. Remember, Sam Harris thinks we could actually become scientific about the nature of value. I think he's wrong. But in any case, Mill certainly thinks this. And the idea, of course, is how do we create greater and greater value for more and more people from a scientific point of view? Well, we ourselves have to figure that out. For Søren Kierkegaard, this is the individual that now no longer believes the narratives that the churches teach. And remember, he's Lutheran, so he grew up Christian, believed in that. And now he's at a point where he has to go through the stages on life's way after understanding Hegel. I don't think this is actually a problem for Hegel, by the way, and I can explain. But for Kierkegaard, it is. You realize I'm the one now that has to find meaning in my life for myself. And what's the first stage for Kierkegaard? The first stage, the bounce back from realizing that none of these traditional religions are true, is to basically live the aesthetic life, the fun life. Live for the fun of it. Aesthetics, right? Enjoy it. And go to parties and things of that sort. And so he does this apparently for a while. Partly, I think, giving up regime was part of this, He also probably understood that life would be difficult for her if she married him because of his cycles. So he might have had her best interest in mind, actually, in thinking that. But in any case, he wants to just party and enjoy life and become a writer. So instead of being a minister, he ends up being a writer, and he writes and he writes and he writes. He becomes absolutely the most famous Danish writer, not only at the time, but probably still. And by the way, if you find it difficult to find original text in English by Kierkegaard today, that's because the ones who own his copyrights basically won't give them up. And so that's the one philosopher that I've discovered that you can't really find that many texts. Maybe I haven't done a recent search, but you can look. But I think basically you have to find books, published books by him, because the ones who have the lock on his English translations are not giving them up, or haven't. In any case, the problem with this aesthetic life, you might have had this experience, because if you've grown up with the same mindset, you as a youth, you're out there, you get your pass to Alyeska, you go and you just ski down really tall, slippery mountains on slippery boards, and you try to kill yourself, except at the very end you always avert it by, going safely somewhere. And you go, yay, however you do, because the exuberance associated with that kind of experience is clearly biologically there for a reason. You lived. Your body's going to reward you for making the right choice and not dying. You know, I'll tell a story about my son who did this, skiing down Alyeska. His friends all went one way, he went the other. Discovered that it was like a 2-story drop, and he landed flat on his feet, and his right knee popped him in the jaw and broke his jaw in 2 places. And he ended up at retired military, so he ended up at Elmendorf for surgery. It was all wired up and everything, and he said, "Oh, pleasant surgery." How Kierkegaardian can you get, you know? In any case, that's the first stage. But what happens is you grow out of this stage. It gets boring. It gets boring. And also, I think your body eventually gets to the point where too many such accidents make life painful. Flipping a snow machine over on your shoulder and breaking your shoulder so that he's got metal parts here, metal parts. This is metal. You know, he goes through a machine, I'm sure he sets it off like crazy. He's 40, he'll be 45 this August. He's married, he has one daughter. He's brilliant, even though she's only 4. However, so you have to change. You can't stay an aesthete forever. So what's the next stage? The next stage on life's way for him is the ethical life. And what does he? He takes this completely different route. Because remember, for Aristotle, if you found the ethical, you were on to something secure. With Kierkegaard, the ethical is in light of Hegelian philosophy that tells you that this is sociality of reason. What is ethical is what your society says is the ethical. You might not believe it. And as his perfect example, he picks King Nobal, Agamemnon, who in that particular situation that I think we've discussed already, maybe many moons ago, was faced with having to yield his daughter Iphigenia up to the priests for them to sacrifice her in payment for what his men had done to the animals on their island while they were waiting for the winds to change so that they could go and attack Troy, right? And he knew that this is just totally fictitious, and yet at the same time he thought because of his position as king he had to do it. So he called his wife by email and asked that she bring Iphigenia to the island so that she could marry. She was going to marry Achilles. Yeah, that's the thing. She'll marry Achilles. Okay, so she comes, discovers that Achilles doesn't even know anything about this because that's not the plan at all. Instead, he's going to turn her over to the priests and they're going to kill her. And, you know, it's kind of like Jesus Christ in Greek, actually. How come I can't find stuff anymore? Is the internet changing so much? That's the official trailer. All right, I'll just do that. This is an actual Greek movie. That's Agamemnon. That's Iphigenia. That's Menelaus. That's Clytemnestra. They now know what the plan is. So. She comes to find that that is really her point in life, is to sacrifice herself for her people. So she goes willingly to the sacrifice.